At Sam Adams, we're constantly improving who we are, what we do, and how we brew. We may craft over 60 styles of beer, but it's Boston Lager that has captured the heart of America since 1984. With its deep amber color, caramel notes, and signature hop character, what better to have in your pint glass? Follow me into the jungle. Sam Adams Boston Lager. Pursue better.
Boston Beer Company, Boston, Mass. Save responsibly.
Feed me more. Welcome to Conversation with the Big Guy. I am the big guy, Ryan Reeves, and I'm sitting here with one, Pat Buck.
I guess I'll be the medium guy. I've been trimming down for my upcoming nuptials. This is episode 2. Thank you for listening. I'm going to put more plugs and make this a little more professional. So subscribe to us on iTunes, on Stitcher, on SoundCloud. Leave a review. Tell a friend. Do something to help the rhythm or the algorithm of this podcast. We appreciate it very much. Check out feedmemore.com. Check out wrestleproonline.com or creatorprowrestling.com. Just wanted to get my shit in early before we talk about stuff.
Numero dos, as my Rosetta Stone Spanish lessons for the number 2 podcast episode. 30 minutes a day, every day. Big guy's trying to broaden his horizons. Yeah.
I think... I was just hoping that it's not like we are serious. We're recording a lot of episodes. It's not just like, hey, let's put out whatever happened in WWE, and then we want to keep this going. This show isn't really about.
Not about that.
It's not about that. Yeah. It's not about. I hate saying this, and this isn't to be ego-ish, but in a way, I guess so. We don't really want anyone on this podcast. We just want to kind of fucking tell stories and bullshit and promote stuff.
Like we talk on Voxer all the time when we talk about this. And we'll have, sometimes, 5, 10, 15-minute messages on Voxer and just going back and forth. And
people may not. I think that civilian world, they don't even know what the fuck Voxer is.
They might not. It's
strictly like a wrestling thing.
It is. So Voxer, to explain to everyone out there, is just essentially a worldwide walkie-talkie for grown-ups. And I remember being a kid and thinking walkie-talkies were the coolest thing in the world. And I had a few at different times. And, it used to be cool to be talking to somebody from the backyard to someone in the front yard. And I thought, that, man, this shit is cool. And now Voxer, could be in China. Our beers.
The beers are here. I'm going to pause this real quick. Okay, we're back. A little technical difficulty. The room just called to let us know they were out of the wine we wanted, but we were talking about Voxer.
Essentially, Voxer is a great tool. Like when we go travel into different countries with the wrestling in different time zones, and sometimes you don't have service over there, but usually when you connect to Wi-Fi and Voxer is an app, it's just a walkie-talkie app, and I could be in China talking to you all the way in New Jersey, or talking to my mom and dad in Las Vegas, and
do they use it?
Yeah, I've had them before when I'm on the road to stay in contact. It's just a way to kind of to keep communication open when otherwise it wouldn't exist and stuff. So
when certain things are just too long to text, it's just so much easier to. It's not even. I know there's voice texting, but for some reason Voxer has it down.
You hit a button and you just talk, and I try to use it for all the people that I communicate to, and like I tell them, get Voxer, please. It's just so much easier than sitting on a telephone, and because you can kind of go at your own pace too, and you could be busy when I'm not busy, and then you could be free and then I'm busy, but it's a way to kind of go back and forth at your own pace, and it's worth checking out.
When my phone rings, I get sometimes I get really pissed off. I'm like, oh fuck, like I'm not ready for this phone call.
Yeah,
Voxer, you can respond when you're ready to respond.
You're like, I'm not in the mood right now, and and I see that you played it and waited 3 hours to get back to me, but it's not a big deal.
So essentially, not only that, how to speed up messages when they go too long.
No, you told me. I forgot. I didn't even realize that. Like you can save yourself so much time. Especially, I leave some long messages. We both know, and I tell you as I go on. I just wasted 5 minutes of your time telling you about shit I know you don't care about
a workout or about what you've eaten today.
I went down this aisle in the grocery store and saw this and blah, and then I just tell you, I just wasted 5 minutes of your time. Now on to the point of the message.
So essentially, this podcast is It's just
wasting each other's
just
time
wasting
in
each other's
person.
time and wasting your time. And we appreciate you guys listening. And I hope hope you guys haven't checked out yet. But anyway, so we got through the first episode, and I think there was a little bit of feedback. Actually, there wasn't feedback. I'm just kind of making that up about the story. But I think people go like, we get who you are. Obviously, they don't know who I am, or at least like, why the fuck am I even here? But I just wanted. I guess this is an origin episode for what's going to happen after this. Because I think the first episode was just like, hey, WWE shit, all the fans clicking on the links, whatever way the internet.
There's been a lot of questions on all that, so I think you have to address it and kind of let them know why we're at this point right now, and why is Pat Buck on this podcast? Because Pat Buck is my best friend. He is the guy that I am trusting with my wrestling career, handling my bookings, and he's been somebody that's always been very loyal and trustworthy in a business where that isn't always the case. So that is why we're here to kind of explain this relationship now.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that, but it wasn't always. I guess I'm in charge of that stuff now. But we met in developmental.
Yeah,
different. Complete. You were a $1 million Tough Enough guy. You went to Deep South, and then you're transferred to OVW. Me, on the other hand, tried the independents for a little bit. I had a little bit of a kind of a, hey, Jim Cornette, I'll mention, was like, you should move to OVW because there's been a couple guys that have, gone through the ranks and been able to earn developmental, for the fans listening, and there are a lot of newer fans, before NXT, there was other developmental systems.
Yeah.
And dare I say OVW was the best one before NXT, before FCW. And I was down there, and I remember the first time I heard about you was a guy named Jack Bull came up to me.
Fearless.
Legendary Jack Bull, who I hope is doing well.
Yeah.
Greg Guthius.
Otherwise known as Barry Bland and just Jack Bull.
A very good man, and he was
Great man.
He was a little older when he was hired, but I remember when he got there, he was very kind to me, and he actually assumed that I was under contract because I was training with the contract class.
Yeah,
and
picture that now in the NXT Performance Center, you have all these talents there, and just picture one guy not being under contract there, but he's there every day. He's involved in everything. He's traveling. He's making all the shows, and he's not under contract and not getting paid. That was Pat Buck back in the day at OVW. Everybody.
So I'm there just clinging on, hoping for a job, and but Jack had no idea. But then he's just like, "Well, how do you get this?" I'm like, "I don't know. I've kind of worked my way up. I'm just trying. I keep chasing the carrot, hoping I'm going to get hired." But as we got talking, he's kind of like, and I was wrestling Jack probably for the last 2 or 3 months, and I knew my position in the company was, and I hate saying it, but it is kind of true that I was an expendable. Where
you got guys hired actually on many different occasions,
but more so, that was okay because a lot of those would be like independent guys or passable matches, and some would and some wouldn't. But there would be a lot of times where these killers and these monsters and these very large men or
body guys, otherwise known as
a lot of body guys would come in through the system, and it's like, okay, and I knew, I'm like, oh fuck, I got to wrestle this person for 2-3 months. On live events, on TV matches, just getting killed by them, getting thrown around, taking bumps. But I was okay with that. But Jack's like, "Oh, bro, you're gonna have your work cut out for you. We got this guy, Ryan Reeves, the $1 million Tough Enough guy. He was 230, now he's 300 pounds.
Yeah, which I've never been 230, so I don't.
And he's rough, dude. So I was just like, shit, all right, whatever. Not that I was nervous. I wasn't at all because there was guys that, I'm like, it can't be that bad. But it still talked me up like, oh, fuck, I don't want to get hurt. Yeah. But
I was 300 pounds at the time, though. Jack wasn't lying as far as I was a big guy.
So I remember you came in. I think you came in the same time as Rodeheimer, maybe? Was that the same?
No, he came in after because that's where the Cody stories came in with some of those that we're touching on later. But
so you came in. I remember right away, first couple of house shows, I was paired with you, and it was fine. And it was like, you weren't so much evolved as a performer, and you're still.
No, it's very early in my career.
Yeah,
there. Yeah,
But I survived, and I'm like, and sometimes I think back to that when people said that you were a little rough around the edges, and that's for a separate episode. But I was like, I wrestled you very, very early on.
Yeah,
a lot.
And I think it's worth noting, and talking about Deep South, and that's going to be down the line. Bill DeMott, there were a lot of positives and a lot of negatives with Bill, and I'm very thankful for all of them. and I like Bill DeMott as a person, but he was a very, very tough trainer. But I didn't reap the rewards of all that right away. It took some years on that. But one of the things that he was adamant about was taking care of your opponent. And we used to do things where we would slam 100-pound heavy bag, and you had to treat this, you had to land it flat. And if you didn't, he would have somebody take you and drop you on the back of your neck, and not that you know, I'm not here to say whether that was right or wrong, but in all fairness, you do learn really fucking quickly how to drop somebody safely, because if you don't, you're not going to be there for long. So that was something that was instilled in me, and that too is something that intensity. He instilled that inside of me, and I had that in me, but he brought it out very early on, and I was able to tap into that, and that created a lot of success for me. But as far as I've always taken pride of always trying to be safe and take care of opponents and realize that I am a strong guy and that I have to be careful at doing different things. And that's not to say that some things aren't a little stiff here and there and whatnot. When you're out there going full speed and you're 300 pounds, 290 pounds, it's not always going to be light.
Sure.
But it's always been something that I take a lot of pride to try to go out there and have that in me.
And I don't think the jury is against you in that regard, because you've had people like Jericho and a few other people. Yeah. I mean, I'm 200 pounds barely. And like I said early on, it was fine. But you know, fast forward, we want to talk about more of the origin stuff. I just remember we both were doing all the OVW stuff. You know, I just want a job. You probably just want to get called up or something. I don't even know what you want at that point. Like when you're in OVW.
Oh, my mindset was just survive the day. I was so mentally fragile from my time in Deep South that I remember, just so a quick story on that. My first day at OVW, when they transferred me from Deep South to OVW. Everyone was like, we used to stretch in Deep South, and it was very boot camp style, very organized, and you know, you'd run a mile or two in your boots before, and then it was 500 Hindu squats, 100 push-ups, 100 crunches, and then it was pretty much 4 hours of drills or 3 hours of drills outside of all this conditioning stuff. But I got to OVW and saw everybody laughing and having fun, and like Al was like in the back because class hadn't started yet.
Sure.
And he's like, all right, guys, let's go. Let's get warmed up. And like, guys were kind of just, it was much more lax. And I was standing there in awe and in fear, waiting for somebody to just come out screaming at us, what the fuck are you guys doing? And it blew my mind looking back at all that.
Jesus. I just remember, you know, and OVW had its high points and low points, and I'm very grateful for all the stuff
Absolutely.
There, and it was a tremendous learning experience. But I do remember one day in particular, we were all kind of like stretching out, and there was rumors in the air they're going to fire 2 or 3 people that day. And I remember you came to me, you're like, I'm getting fired. I'm like, shut the fuck up.
And I didn't even know of those rumors yet. I just,
oh really?
No, didn't have no idea. And I've always been, at the time I was having dreams, very, you know, vivid dreams that I was going to be released. And I was at a very negative mindset at that point in time for over some things with wrestling and whatnot. And it's still to this day, it always, I look back and I didn't say anything to anybody else. I just came up to you, and we weren't even that close.
No,
we were like nowhere near like where we are now, but I just felt the need. I don't know why. I just like, I'm getting fired today. Like, and you go, no, you're not. And I said, yeah, I am. And I did.
Yeah, I remember it was right before drills, and we were all kind of speculating. It's funny, we were speculating on, we just heard rumors, or at least I did. At least I don't know if I kind of, maybe I was secretly hoping everyone get fired because then I was hoping I get a job. But I remember that day in particular, and I'm like, you're not. And I was kind of like surveying the scene, like, who's going to get released? And it was a weird time then too, because if you were let go, like you were forgotten about the next day.
It was a different period too. Yeah.
Like I remember a couple guys were released before that for multiple different reasons.
Disappeared.
And it was just like, you weren't even allowed to talk about it. Like it's just like, they're gone. That's it. Life goes on.
Yeah.
And I remember that night actually, Cody was the one that told me. Cody's like, you know, hey, Ryan just got released.
Yeah.
And along with Seth Skyfire and Jack Bull, who I just talked about, who, bless his heart, had an interesting persona. But it was also ironic that at the time I felt like they released the person arguably were with the best physique and the best worker down there.
Yeah.
It was like, oh my God.
Skyfire for sure.
Because I remember thinking that too as a guy trying to get a job. I'm like, I'm nowhere near the level of Seth Skyfire. And I'm like, I'm fucking 100 pounds lighter than you. And I'm like, holy shit, like this is some crazy stuff that went on. But and I remember I stayed with OVW and you kind of disappeared.
Yeah,
like I
hit a rough point.
None of us, I don't know if maybe a couple of guys talked to you, but after that happened, I don't think I saw of you until when I went in for stop by to get something to eat one time. So
yeah, no, that was one of those things that I had to get away mentally. I just went and I was just lived a normal life essentially, and met a girl and moved in with her, and she had a kid at the time and kind of took over being essentially father to that kid, and trying to figure out my life, because at that point in time in developmental, everything is so unsure, and to get released about 2 years into your developmental career, and I wasn't in the mindset that I'm in now, and I hadn't gone through the things and learned a lot of the things, and I was 24 years old, and it felt like I'd let the world slip through my hands, and just such a huge opportunity. And I didn't want to go back to Las Vegas. And I remember, I didn't talk to my parents for a good stretch during that. I was ashamed. Mm-hmm. And it was like I didn't know what I had to do. I just knew I had to get away from wrestling for a while, and I had to get my mind right. And I didn't intend it for it to be as long as it was. Other circumstances kind of played a part in that, and it was just something, it happened, but it was all for the best. But I knew if I went back to Las Vegas that at the time, and with wrestling, I needed to stay in Louisville because the WWE was connected with them, and that if I moved home, that I might I'd be moving away from this and wrestling. I didn't want to go get a job or go back to school, and because this was my dream, this is what I left for. And whenever I've set a goal and a mission for something, I accomplish it. It doesn't always happen right away, but and that was the mindset for that.
Do you think, looking back, do you agree with the fact that, are you grateful for the fact they let you go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was one of those.
Do you think you deserved it, or you just
and a lot of people, said, "Oh, you had no business." And Danny Davis was one of those who was in charge of OVW at the time, and he goes, "You did not deserve to be released." And it was one of those things. I think
fans are going to ask, "Why do you think you were?"
Yeah,
I mean, I don't. Do you even know why?
I don't. I think it was. So the business has changed a little bit now with like in NXT and the development of people down there, and my first year in wrestling. But so I'm very grateful for how my career has turned out, because I've gotten things that talents don't have, a lot of them now. Bill DeMott breaks human beings down, and you have to be a fucking man to survive Bill DeMott, and most people couldn't. So I am grateful that he put me through the things that he did, because he made me more of a man than I would have been coming through an easier system, and taught me a lot of hard lessons. Do I agree with all of them? No, but that's neither here nor there. But at the same time, I feel like it slowed my development down on different things.
You think you had higher expectations?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, John Laurinaitis came down, I'll never forget, in Deep South, and said, we expect you to be on the roster at this point in time, going against Brock Lesnar. And I was nowhere near ready at that point in time.
Just been doing
but
drills,
I knew it put a lot of pressure on me, because I realized, in being a fan my entire life and coming in, and athletically, this was easy for me to pick up, but I was psychologically broken down very early on. And at that point in time, I didn't know how to turn those negatives into positives, and it ate away. I mean, and a lot of it wasn't just me. A lot of people quit, and a lot of people's wrestling careers came to an end through Deep South Wrestling.
Yeah,
it just slowed my development down, I feel like, for a while, but eventually I got that all back, and when I hit hard. So you know what I mean? It just was one of those things. There were some negatives to that, but I was able to eventually turn them into positives, so I'm very thankful for it.
So basically, I remember this from my end, because like I again, not to toot my horn, I don't even know if this is worth saying, but like I was in OVW for 4.5 fucking years, pretty much like, trying going to both the contract class, training with Rip Rogers at night, making all the events, trying to get myself a job. And I remember when you're released, you're gone.
Yeah.
And then over time, I was going through, holy shit, I'm going broke, and I bounced around in Louisville.
We were both kind of going through bad times at the same time, I believe.
We were both. I remember the first time I saw you, near after that, we both were bouncing at the same place. Yeah. We were at Sully's on 4th Street, and I remember you're going, "What the fuck are you doing here?" And I'm like, "I'm working here."
Funny story about that, and for everyone listening, when I got released, I tried to do some independence
Did you?
Yeah, in Tennessee. I did a couple shots down
Holy
there. And
shit.
I had the Nissan Titan at the time.
Smart fans' brains just exploded to hear that you attempted to do independence.
Yeah. And then at the time I had my Nissan Titan and it was for I want to say it was for $75 or something. Not even, maybe it might have been 50. But I was allowed to sell I remember going and getting a little cheap Polaroid camera, and
oh my God.
I've always eaten a tremendous amount of food, and so at this time, and when you're at WWE at that time, you get your 90 days.
Sure.
And I remember I caught up my debt, because a lot of us at that time, you make enough to kind of get by, but your cards can still. So I kind of caught my cards up, and I had just a little bit of money, and I remember doing that show and coming back, and I'd lost at the end of it. I lost $25, and I was like, well, I'm gonna have to get a real job on top of trying to do this. And so,
who did you wrestle? Do you remember?
Sean Schultz was one of my matches. I remember putting him over because he was always an extra at a lot of the WWE events we do, and we'd talk and laugh about it. But it was so. I remember not trying to get a job at different places, and I've always had a great work ethic and always applied myself, but I didn't have the deepest job history of different things, and pro wrestling doesn't necessarily translate
never
unless they're a fucking mark.
In that case, which you could be a president of a company.
So I remember I got a job at the bar we used to all go out and party at, Sully's.
Yeah.
And I'll never, this was kind of a low for me at this point. I will never forget, because there were so many memories of us going there and having a good time, and all the guys in the camaraderie down there, and just all the funny shit that would happen. But I remember I had a green Sully's polo shirt on with my jeans and probably fucking basketball shoes at the time, because that was what in Luke Gallows, I always wore basketball shoes for some reason with jeans. I was a big basketball shoe mark for early on in my life, and they put me. It was really packed outside, and they go, "We need you to stand on this box to oversee everything."
The beer tub girl and stuff. Okay,
yeah, but I just remember thinking to myself, and people were making comments, and I go, "What the fuck has become of my life?" Yeah. And I remember right then and there, kind of I can't do this. I can't work here, and
that's what it was.
Yeah, standing on that box, and because some people were incredible Hulk comments, but it was really,
I don't think
it wasn't a necessarily negative thing, but it just brought back bad memories for me after having such a good time there of oh, now I'm here for $10 an hour.
Gotcha. Because
breaking up fights.
That place, it's weird because in the developmental system, a lot of guys that would move down there, and a couple guys did that, and it used to be a nice way to kind of go in. We had relationships with places that would get high, Compton worked there, Beast, Shad Gaspard worked there, Armando Estrada worked there, you worked there, I worked there, and I remember
that's where we kind of
where we became friends. And I remember distinctly,
I asked you one day, you were standing by me. Do you remember this?
No.
I was working, and I didn't know you got hired there.
Okay.
And I was standing at my post, and you were standing there too, and I thought you were just hanging out with me by yourself talking.
Yeah.
And then you're like, "Oh, I got hired." I go, "Oh, I thought you were just talking." It was the most awkward, and I didn't notice your shirt or anything. I thought you just came to hang out with me. I was like, "That's cool of him."
Side story, and this, I don't know how I hustled this, was at some point, I in my head, I thought I was going to move to. I moved to OVW when I was 21, so I figured, okay, I'll be hired by 22. I'll be IC champion by the time I'm 24. So that really didn't work out that way. So I realized I had to go back to school. I left college to move down to OVW my third year. So basically I went, oh shit, I need to finish school. So I was actually getting college credit for bouncing at Sully's. I convinced...
Son of a bitch.
I went to a school ironically called Sullivan University. It was a hospitality college. I don't know if you remember, I used to come to class, and I felt so embarrassed. But there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people. I remember Beth Phoenix, before she was hired, would come to practice. She'd have on our Perkins waitress attire. So I'd come to class, and I went to culinary school in my fucking chef apron and my smock. But I remember at one point I had to do an internship, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to work at this restaurant downtown. And the guy's like, no, really, what are you going to do? I'm like, well, I'm really going to be bouncing. Is that okay? He was a wrestling fan, so he signed off on it. So I was getting college credit when I worked there, which is great.
Funny you say that. Beth Phoenix, by the way, thought I was gay for 2 years because of jokes. You, Cody, and Domino, and everyone would always fuck around down there, and that's a whole different episode. all the pranks. But somebody had told her that I was gay when I first got there, and she came. She goes, there was something going on with one of the developmental divas at the time down there, which clearly would indicate that I wasn't.
Yes.
And she goes, I thought you and I. It made me laugh hysterically, and to this day. So thanks a lot, guys.
So I remember at Sully's they had this like scheme, which it wasn't a scheme, but I remember like. The bar would be dead from 8 till 10. There wouldn't be a lot of people there. 10 o'clock, it's bumping, and then it's fucking madness, and we'd be thrown
till 4 a.m. or whatever, 2 or whatever time it was. Right?
It was 4.
It was later. I feel. Was it 2? Yeah.
But so there was a dead area. So what the gimmick at the bar was, they would have happy hour. Now the way happy hour worked, not just like low price drinks. What they would do is like a raffle. They would get people to sign up for an email list or whatever, and they would call up these idiots in Louisville. These young college kids that can still drink. I'm pretty sure they were of age, but then again, we're the ones checking their IDs. So I don't know if they were. And they would say, "Hey, you won a party at Sully's." And basically, it's $10 a person, and they can drink whatever they want for 2 hours.
Yeah.
So the whole gimmick was between 8 and 10. A hot chick, a sorority girl could show up with all of her sisters and fraternity brothers and drink whatever the fuck they want for 2 hours. We would come to work around that time, and I have noticed that these kids, and you and I both noticed, they would order too many drinks, and they would leave them on the table.
I forgot about.
And sometimes our boss wouldn't be there, sometimes he would, but these were like little, they were bigger than shots, but they were still enough drinks.
Yeah.
And we'd get fucking hammered.
Yeah, because that job sober fucking sucks. Let's be honest. And that's one of them. It was, and I was never a huge drinker, but I remember in here and there, and I forgot all about that. That made that job
fun.
Yeah.
And
looking back at my job history, I found that all the jobs I was able to drink on, I had them.
Oh yeah. So I don't know if you remember this too, because look, there weren't a lot of fights, but there was enough issues. You may throw out, I'd say on average, I'd throw one guy out every like 3 nights, maybe.
Yeah.
And maybe I've been in like 3 or 4 fights there. Not many. Yeah. Sometimes I don't know if you were there when we pulled people out the back door.
I remember a few different occasions on like Derby week and like having to choke somebody out and drag them out through the front. And the cops were great back then. The cops, in the moment you left.
Was it Nancy? What was it?
Steve Yancey.
Yancey.
Huge fucking mark, but awesome guy. Obsessed with Hulk Hogan, and it's just telling the truth. But he a hell of a guy. But I remember like getting, you drag these guys out, and and ultimately it was diffuse the situation, and you never try to throw punches and whatnot, because obviously then you get into legal, territory and whatnot. But get the guys out there, the cops would be on them like that, and the cops were so cool there. The cops always liked us and seemed to like, they understood our job and they took it off of our hands as quickly as possible, and they were great.
And they liked the wrestling part of it too. I can't say I didn't punch or throw a few roundhouse kicks to people, because if you pulled them out the back door, there was no cameras.
Yeah.
And I remember a couple of times we'd really mangle some people. But I do remember a couple nights, I don't know if you remember this, where it was so boring, we'd still be drinking. You would actually go, yo, push me into this group of people. Yeah. And I would shove you, like give you a shoulder check, and we'd see if they pushed you back.
Yeah.
And if they didn't, they were cool. Like, hey, sorry, no big deal. But if the guy was drunk enough to go, what the fuck? Then we would attack him.
Yeah.
Throw him out of the bar.
I forgot all about that too. Wow,
shit.
This was we were just trying to find ways to entertain ourselves, but clearly it was based on if they instigated it after we instigated it.
I remember that moment was like, "Yo, push me in this group," and then we'd see, and I'd be like, "Okay, they shove back."
I remember being Halloween and going as Terminator Ryback with the spiked jacket and no undershirt, and just walking around, me and you drunk as fuck on Jack, and I hit somebody with the spikes, and but the bouncer there got rid of them before it got like. But I remember, I think we did the whole shoving thing with the spiked jacket. And
oh my god,
we did it. Yeah, it was always in good fun, and we don't condone that sort of behavior. But it was a different time back then.
It was a totally different time. It was pretty wild too. But after that, I think, and there's only so much working in the nightlife, man. It's like you become a zombie though. You're getting out at like 4 a.m.
Yeah.
And I bartended and I've bounced, and like I actually left that because I ran into you later, and we were friends. But then, I heard through the grapevine that you were working at Smokey Bones.
Yeah.
And I in my head I was like, why would he leave bouncing? Why would I was still, and you still weren't back in wrestling yet.
No.
But I was like, what the fuck's he doing? I remember I stopped by there and you told me this is a great job.
I wasn't making a lot of money bouncing, and some nights, you might work 6 hours a night, and it might be for 3 or 4 nights a week, and not every night was busy there. And on like the weekdays, they might only need you for 3 or 4 hours. And I've always, like I said, I've eaten a tremendous amount of food, and it was one of those things. I was like looking at jobs in Louisville, Kentucky, and ultimately my goal was to go back and to wrestle. But I need a job just to pay the bills and to survive first. And so that's where I was like, you know what, this serving thing might be a good idea, because one, I could work on my speaking skills, and I'm going to be a little uncomfortable in this sort of job after, being a wrestler and having to then, hi, my name's Ryan. Can I take your order? Would you start off with a cold, tasty beverage?
So you were never a server.
Never a server.
That.
So in a lot of these restaurants, I remember I went into restaurant after restaurant and was turned down. I went in for interviews, and they all I've always tried to tell the truth and be honest. And I would, I want to go back to wrestling, but I need a job to survive right now. And I think they just looked at me and assumed, oh, maybe he's going to get hired pretty quickly back or something. I don't know.
Or maybe it's a fact that's pretty fucking frightening if like you're at a table and then
285 pounds at the time, or 290, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And maybe
if you're competing for a job and you're, say, 24 years of age, and you're trying to get hired as a server, and then the next interview is a 22-year-old college hot chick, or whatever, maybe I'll go with her. So how did you get the job?
Eventually I went into Smokey Bones, and I was on $1 Million Tough Enough, and we had a little bit of TV exposure with that. The manager, Dave Cyphers of Smokey Bones in Louisville, Kentucky, he's no longer the manager there. He was fired for sexual harassment. Was, thank God, a fucking mark. And I say that jokingly, everybody. But
I picture him listening and going, "Oh my God, he mentioned me." He
mentioned me, and it's on his Facebook post. He didn't even look at my. So I'm going in. I'm filling out applications. I'm doing interviews. I'm getting turned down. All it took to get a job at this restaurant was just, "Oh, I liked you on that show. You're hired." And then that kind of started my professional serving career.
That's great. And I remember I went in there and you're like, "No, this is a really good job." And you gave me the rub, and they were like, and you were doing such a good job as a server that you're like, "I vouch for this kid." And you got me hired as well.
We had quite a few wrestlers. ODB,
ODB,
who's wrestled. Scott Cardinal was in OVW for a little bit down there, and just kind of wrestling.
Dirty Money worked there for like 2 minutes.
He didn't last quite as long. No. Yeah.
I think he had
the name like Dirty Money. You couldn't expect him.
I've wrestled him like 3 or 4 times.
I always enjoyed him, though.
He's great.
He was always really, really nice.
Who else worked there? Lupe. Didn't he work there?
Lupe Vizcarra.
Who I got hired from wrestling him in one of the worst matches I've probably ever been in. I can't. That guy's
Lupe was quite the character.
Space
to everyone.
Cadet.
There was a point he didn't know his age
because he was lying about it.
Yeah,
that's how he got hired.
That was the supposed rumors. He was lying about his age for so long, and
this goes.
But he just had a great body physique. by at that time what they were kind of looking for, and but outside of that,
not a lot going on upstairs. Yeah. It was amazing.
He was always nice though,
and broke my heart at the time. I'm like, I remember wrestling him, and this was I've had many, I guess you can say, tryouts, and there was one time in particular, one of my later ones in OVW, where 6 of us were asked to work in front of Ace, John Laurinaitis, who was, fans listening, he was the only person really in charge of hiring or firing at the time. Well, firing, I mean, whatever. Like, he was the guy. He gave you your job. That was it. I mean, sure, people above him, obviously Vince or whatever, but he was the dude. And I remember wrestling Lupe in front of him, and we all joked around because he by far did the worst that day. And we're like, imagine he gets hired and none of us do. And he did. And he got hired. But Smokey Bones was so we're both working there. Yeah. I don't know if we moved in after that. We both had a pretty rough breakup.
Yeah. So I think essentially for this, we started at Smokey Bones because we both were kind of going through this. I'd broken up with a girlfriend at the time. I think you had a real bad breakup.
And they were also very cool with wrestling, like in terms of like, hey, I got to take off this because TV was on Wednesday night, at least for me.
They were very flexible.
Yeah. And I remember going like, well, if they're cool with it, man, come back. But that was a little down the road. But I mean, like, so we're both working there.
This was the beginning of my life changing, essentially, working at Smokey Bones. I think it's worth talking about in the next episode, everything that happened there, because I don't want to kind of to rush through this.
Okay.
It was such a.
You were in a bad place.
I was in a very bad place, and this was such a pivotal point in my life. And Cody Rhodes always joked about, because we lived together briefly, and he always said, he goes, Ryan, you need to hit rock bottom, and he would say it kind of jokingly.
He would tell me that too.
But he goes, you need to experience rock bottom to truly. And I felt like, because my life, I never really, and I've always, applied myself and done well at things, and I never really struggled. I came from a middle class, nice family, and I had a great childhood and things like that. And wrestling was like my first, punch in the face. It was welcome to the real fucking world. And you either need to learn how to man up or you're going to drown. So this was kind of the beginning of me becoming a man, I feel like. So I don't want to jump over that, because I know there's a lot of people out there, and again, when I've talked about the secret stuff on TV, and that was very important to me, because to this day, the best feedback I get, the most meaningful messages and things that conversations I get are from talking about that period. And I know there's a lot of people out there. Life is not easy. Life can fucking suck. But it's all our mindset, and this was me. This was the beginning of me creating the mindset that has created a lot of success for me. So,
but there were, I think, because we will keep that for maybe a more serious episode. There was some funny shit we did at I don't know if I should explain.
At Smokey Bones?
Yeah,
that's what I want. I think we talk about that next, because it's such good stuff that I don't want us to miss anything.
Okay.
I think we wrap this up and we save that for next week, because there's some real gold nuggets in there.
I figure on a Smokey, I mean, should we say some stories? I don't know if we really gave them much. I don't know. Maybe, gosh, I'm torn here. I mean, we're 38 minutes in. I still think we could do another 7 minutes or something. What do you think?
I'm trying to think of the beginning of Smokey Bones.
Maybe we'll do a beginning part, and then there'll be a part 2. So I'll do one story. I don't know if I should talk about the financial thing.
I think that's a little later on in there, though, too. I'm trying to... The beginning of Smokey Bones was... I mean, essentially, early on, it was... And this is funny. I could talk about this. I remember, I'd broken up with the girlfriend, and she always had, and I don't want to say she had a drinking problem, but she enjoyed having vodka at night, which was what kind of triggered me to start, outside of when we would go out on the weekends or socially have some drinks back then, here and there at work. This started turning into a nightly thing for me when I was with her, drinking with her and enjoying the night. And it slowly kind of grew, and it grew, and it grew. And eventually we broke up, and it was a mutual breakup. But it kind of, and it's one of those things, I knew it was for the best. Right then, a month later, I was like, why don't I want you back.
But you're young at the time. And actually, it's funny because you said the thing about Cody. Cody would tell that to me too. He goes, you got to hit, he would say that you have to hit rock bottom with a girl.
Yeah.
And he would say that. And I was like, I don't really understand. Cody was wise for his age. And I think at that time period, you and I were both going through. Yeah.
You have to experience bad to truly appreciate the good, I feel, and to understand the good, and to have that that hunger to want to stay in the good, because the bad sucks.
I remember being a little bit concerned, and this was as I got to know you a little more, because there was a time where you were working there, and I kind of knew of you and you knew of me, but we still were just kind of same thing as when we worked at the bar, friendly, but I didn't know a lot about your life. Yeah. And I remember one time in particular, you're like, hey, what are you doing after work? And I went to your place when you're living at Creekside.
Oh, yeah.
And
that place was
all
a
it was a couch.
From the ex-girlfriend who lent it to me. It wasn't even mine.
But literally stacks upon stacks of wrestling tapes. Yeah. WrestleManias and stuff like that. So, I respect, again, like I said, you love this. And vodka bottles. It really was. And I was like, holy shit. I'm like, dude, we're both in a dull place. We got to fucking move in together. Let's.
That got me back on. I needed that more than anything at the time, because, like I said, it was the breakup, and the TV. Nothing was mine. It was just a studio shithole apartment, and I'm living day to day on my tips and setting aside $15 of money a day to go buy my bottle of Burnett's vodka, the big bottle, and 2 things of Diet Mountain Dew or Diet Coke or something.
Would you go through the whole bottle?
Yeah, absolutely. Every night. And what I would do, and so
But you still trained this whole time. Like, you're
Yeah,
still
I
lifting
stayed,
like a
and
man.
like my weight went down. I think the lightest I've ever been was like 255 during that,
And
it was like I was just like I remember like I let my body hair grow out, and little things like I just kind of like
I do remember the arm hair. 'Cause everyone-
yeah, and Jimmy or the manager at the time goes, "You look like a fucking werewolf," and then I like looked in the mirror, I go, "Jesus, I look like shit."
And I remember I couldn't fully get you because like I'm like, dude, man, you're here. You're living in Louisville for the purpose that wrestling is big in this city.
Yeah.
And you still love this, but you're working.
I had to find myself
50 to 60 hours a week.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like I was trying to understand that. I was like, fuck, man. Like we both were in pretty bad places.
Yeah.
But
I didn't know what to do. I was living, like I said, we always joke about, I say the lost souls of this world. And I was waking up without a purpose, and I hadn't discovered goal setting yet, essentially. And the success I did have before was kind of was luck. And I never really understood about kind of like determining my mindset and setting goals. And I remember, drinking a bottle of Burnett's every night. I would watch wrestling matches, and I would, at the time when I was a big chewing tobacco guy for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just like big, huge drink, dip, watch match, just back and forth till the point where I was just like, boom, I would put on the movie Wedding Crashers because that movie made me feel good. And it made me laugh because, that's something like The Secret we'll talk about.
Yeah.
Laughter is such a great emotion, and it's so good for your soul. And at the time I didn't, I just knew that it took my mind off of.
and at the time, were you talking to any of the guys at all?
I kind of, and I've always been one that's I like,
You're a loner.
I think I love being around everybody, and I can talk, but I'm just one of those guys. I'm okay being by myself because, and even at that time when I wasn't into the personal development like I am now, I'm comfortable being alone. But I truly cherish my relationships with the friends that I do have, and like guys, everyone in the WWE. I actually that like live events and like joking around with guys like Ziggler and Wade and Heath and everybody. I feel like I there was nobody up there I couldn't talk to and fuck around with and have a good time with, and just I loved that element of it. But at the time, I was embarrassed. Because I feel like you look at me and I, like I said, I let the world slip through my hands, and I just kind of had to find myself and who I was as a person.
Okay, so now we're at Smokey Bones, and I think we can wrap this up here. But then we're also kind of leaving on a depressed note.
I think
we'll save it.
I think
This
the
is
stories are so good that we got coming up, and this is again, I want to be open and honest and let people see, that.
The human side,
of why I am where I am, why I feel the way I do, and the work that I put in, and the struggles. We all have our story, and this is just part of mine. So,
and maybe it's only interesting to us, and people are like, this shit sucks. But I think they will, just if people knew, because you hear about whatever. I think people will. You'll dig the stories of. There was so much that went into your life, especially my life, whatever, but more particularly yours. This is a conversation with the big guy, your life before they saw you up there. And if fans knew that, or anyone knew that, it's just it's fun. It's we're just bullshitting.
And there's no, and to me, there is no sad note because it's all been, it's bad things, or what we perceive to be bad things can happen in life or negative at the time, but we always have a choice how we react to them. And I feel that I have, even things that have happened that may be perceived as negative, I've been able to overcome them, and I think people are going to see that as we go on. So I look forward to talking about the Smokey Bones.
So this is Origins Part 1. We'll be back next week with Part 2, and we'll get all into the
juicy details of the Smokey Bones
of our
saga.
Smokey Bones career. We have great pride in this barbecue joint. Also, the logo for this show is actually made off the Smokey Bones logo. People don't really understand.
Mark did a great job on that.
Mark Carino, shout out to him. Fantastic, young, talented graphic designer. Gonna plug some things. Plug feedmemore.com, WrestleProOnline.com, CreativeProWrestling.com. I'm Buck Never Stops on Twitter. I think I'll add some stuff post to plug the dates and all that stuff coming up. But this is the meat and potatoes, and we'll be back next week. You want to close out with anything?
You're listening to Conversation with the Big Guy. Thank you.
I'm Bob Ruff, host of the Truth and Justice podcast. Each season on Truth and Justice, we reinvestigate a wrongful conviction cold case. Our investigations are shared on the show in real time, and you actually participate in the investigation. Season 3 has just begun, so this is the perfect time to get on board right from the beginning of a brand new case. Search for Truth and Justice on your favorite podcast directory and start listening and participating today. Start on episode 301, Murder on September, to join in on the investigation.